as we say in South Jersey, ain't good for much. But one of the things in life I'm actually pretty darn good at is body surfing. How many of you are body surfers? Wow, look at all of you. Okay, erase that sermon illustration. No. So what is body surfing? Body surfing is like surfing on a surfboard, except there's no board. There's your body is the board. You just point your body towards shore, you jump into a wave, and away you go. As soon as I was able to stand up in the surf, my dad was a lifelong expert. He started schooling me on my body surfing technique and teaching me, how to pick just the right wave, how to time my jump so I would catch it just at the right point in the curl, and how to grab a lungful of breath and hold it and ride it out all the way until my belly scraped on the sand and the seashells as the wave came to rest on the beach. That was one inspiration. The other was my having two brothers who were also taught by my dad. That only added intense competition to the experience. And to this day, in fact, just last August when we were down in Ocean City, the three of us were out there competing like our family pride depended on it. Which of course it does. It does. One of the reasons that my wife Jean doesn't like to go to the beach is because she never sees me, because she doesn't like the water, and I do. I'm 3/4 of my time on the beach. I'm in the water, because that's who I am. Yep, I am Chuck Coblentz, body surfer par excellence. That's who I was. Now, you're probably wondering about this time, why am I telling you this? Good question. It's because there was one day on the beach in Avalon, New Jersey, many years ago, when the last thing I wanted to do was body surf. In fact, on that day, I wondered if I would ever body surf again. The date was July 7th, 1975. I was 17 years old. The night before, along with 3 friends, we had driven from Avalon to Ocean City and waited in a line 2 blocks long to get into the Village Theater, which was located on the boardwalk. And the movie playing that night? Yeah, Jaws. I'm not sure that I can this morning accurately describe the effect that seeing that movie had on me that night, but I'm going to try. First of all, I'd never been in a theater where there was so much electricity. There was anticipation. This was followed by hysteria, and ultimately wide-eyed, bone-chilling, existential fear. The pulsating gasps that were emanating from the boardwalk that night were so deafening that I almost couldn't hear my own pathetic screams. The theater seats, they took a pounding. It was every chomp of the great white shark. With every chomp, we lunged backwards so we would rip the mounting bolts from the concrete floor. And the girl sitting next to me, who I barely knew, kept digging her fingernails into my arm until it was as if the shark was biting me every time he attacked. I walked from the theater that night, breathless, just thrilled beyond belief, but shaken in a way that I'd never been shaken before. But it wasn't until the following day that I realized how shaken I actually was. That morning, my family and friends and I, we did every morning when we're down the shore. We got up, we ate breakfast, we packed our lunch, we put on our bathing suits, we gathered our towels, and we walked 1 block from the rental to the beach. But on that morning, the day after Jaws, the beach didn't quite feel the same. It seemed alien, unfriendly, like a haunted house where instead of cobwebs and dust, you've got sun and sand. It doesn't make sense. And I couldn't bring myself to go in the water. I couldn't bring myself to go. Me, Chuck Coblentz, body surfer, could not bring myself to go in the water. Did I say go in the water? I meant to say go near the water. I absolutely remember walking along in the little shallow part, looking out and stepping on a clamshell and almost coming out of my swimming suit. That's how scared I was. What had changed? The temperature of the water was still the same. The waves were still the same. The other beachgoers, who obviously hadn't seen the movie, were playing in the surf just the same. Many of them were toddlers, which made me feel even greater, I had changed. And more accurately, I had been changed. And you want to know who to this day I blame for that change? Steven Spielberg. As many of you know, Steven Spielberg was the director of Jaws, and he was the reason I couldn't go into water. He was the reason on that day I lost my identity as a body surfer. Steven Spielberg, you see, was a peddler of fear. And boy, he was so good at it. And of course, that's what he was paid to do. If Jaws didn't scare anybody, it wouldn't have made any money. It would have been a horrible disappointment to sit in there if it didn't scare anybody. But that wasn't the case. He did his job. He peddled fear like no one else had before him, because Jaws at that time became the highest grossing motion picture in history. And because of that, I couldn't bring myself to set foot in the water the day after seeing it. Because I was no longer Chuck Coblentz, body surfer par excellence. I was Chuck Coblentz, landlubber. On that day, and I'll never forget this, fear and fear alone changed who I was. But then again, fear has a way of changing who we are. This is nothing new. Nothing new. Scriptures reveal that the church early on recognized that of all the opponents of their nascent faith, the greatest enemy they faced was fear. And saints, that continues to be the case today. I mentioned last week a New York Times CNN poll which demonstrated that we as a nation are more afraid of terrorism than at any time since September of 2001. We had a real reason to be frightened then. That wasn't fake, that was real. What's concerning is fear has the capacity to change who we are, not just as individuals, but also as a nation, built on freedom and liberty. Last week, the sermon focused on the terrorists themselves and pointed out that the goal of terrorists is not killing and maiming per se, but killing and maiming in dramatic fashion is merely the means by which they hope to achieve their goal. And the goal of a terrorist is, as their name implies, their goal is to terrorize us, to frighten us to the point that we change who we are. Fear can cause us to re-examine our values, can make us lose trust in one another. As Americans, fear can tempt us to purge our so-called unalienable rights. And as Christians, as John warns us, fear can cause us to question the very foundations of our faith. Last week, I focused on fear caused by acts of terrorism. This morning, I'd like to talk to you about the ones who I'll refer to, as I have with Steven Spielberg, refer to them as peddlers of fear. Those who have fear to sell and who rely on our buying it in order to get what they want. Fear peddlers are not who we would think of as terrorists, insofar as they don't bomb buildings or wear suicide vests. But here's the thing. Their goal is exactly the same. To scare us into doing something or watching something that we ordinarily wouldn't do or watch. Peddlers of fear exploit our capacity to fear in order to get their way. Think about peddlers, fear peddlers, as this. Even if there's little or nothing to be afraid of, like in my closet or underneath my bed when I was a kid, they'll exaggerate or make something up out of the blue in order to frighten us into buying what they're selling. Jaws was a movie that was about shark attacks. Do shark attacks happen? Yes. But do they happen like they did in that movie? No. And how often do they happen? Not a lot. There was something else that happened years ago when Halley's Comet visited the Earth. I'm trying to remember, I think it was like 1912, somewhere around there. Well, Halley's Comet is a comet in the sky, and it was going by, and it was big and bright in the sky. And some people were worried about it. And so someone took advantage of their worry and began to sell something called comet pills. And what comet pills were supposed to do was, when the tail of the comet, which was probably poisonous, went through by the Earth and it fell, you wouldn't die because you took your comet pills. They sold millions of comet pills. They didn't do anything. Halley's Comet didn't do anything. It just went safely on its way and came back to visit us, later on. There was nothing to it, but they invented a fear. Here's one you all remember. Y2K. Remember that? Oh, yeah. Boy, were they trying to scare us on that one, right? I mean, what did we do? We went out and bought stuff, we bought plastic to make sure we didn't, that all of our computers were going to blow up or something. Everything was supposed to happen. Nuclear weapons were going to launch, everything. We were so scared. There was nothing to it. There was nothing to it. Anyway, Joel's and Comet pills and Y2K are one thing, but compare that to what the fear peddlers are up to today. Chief among them, of course, politicians, who even if there's not a crisis, they'll invent one in order to scare us into throwing our support behind them. Right behind them are the talking heads and the pundits who turn our fear into ratings and advertising dollars. Heck, even weathermen and ladies are in on it, aren't they? Now, when's the last time they underestimated a snowfall, right? Because if they go, well, it's probably not going to be much, you won't turn it on later on. But if they say, there's a possibility for the blizzard of the century, oh, we're there. We're there, and we're a ShopRite too, or a Stop and Shop, or a Food Town. We're everywhere. All because of fear. And yeah, just to be fair, some of my brothers and sisters are in on it too. Those hellfire and brimstone preachers, right? Who exploit our fear of death and our quest for meaning. Some of them turn them into mega churches with 7-figure salaries and mega mansions and mega jets and mega yachts. These are just a few of the peddlers of fear who play off one of our most primal instincts for personal gain of some sort, whether it's power or prestige or wealth. Fear has become such a common part of our lives these days that we often take for granted its effect on our behavior as a society, but also as the Church of Jesus Christ. But saints, we ignore the impact fear has on our lives at our own peril. Because as we heard in John's first epistle this morning, the more fear we harbor in our hearts, the less capacity we have to love. According to John, fear and love are inversely proportional. When our fear becomes so great that it replaces love as the prime motivator in our lives, it changes who we are. Just like the fear of being eaten by a great white shark while I was body surfing changed who I was on that day on the beach. And we who are called upon by God to bring hope to the world simply cannot allow this to happen, no matter what it is that scares us or no matter who it is that scares us. And so, just like last week, the question before us is this: how can we overcome our fear? Now, the answer that Jesus provided in John's Gospel last week was this: put that which frightens us squarely before us. All right, just like Moses did when he raised the bronze serpent before the Israelites who were frightened in the wilderness, and see it for what it really is. When we do that, we inevitably discover that our fear far outweighs reality. We open the closet and look in, there's nothing there. We look under the bed, there's nothing there. What I did with my fear of great white sharks was I went at them. I put them up in front of me. I began to study sharks. Every book in the library about sharks I took home. I began to read on them. I realized that the odds of getting killed by a vending machine are greater than being killed by a shark. The odds of being killed by a cow are greater than... Do we run in fear when we see a cow? The odds are greater of you being hit by a chandelier and... Never mind. Anyway, Sorry. Don't start looking up. It's fine. I'll let you know. But anyway, the point is that, facing down our fears is a proven way to be the person that God created us to be. After I did all that work and everything, and actually even by the next day when I started to think about things, I went back to being Chuck Coblentz body surfer. I went back to being who I was because I was able to face that down. So anyway, that's all well and good. But how about this week we follow John's lead and take it to the next step? For the Israelites, gazing upon the bronze serpent, enabled them to overcome their fears. That was just the start. They still had the journey to the promised land, right? And how can we as Christians then put all of our fears behind us and walk boldly forth? Well, John's advice is simple. Listen again to his words. He says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love does what? Perfect love casts out fear. So we need to allow love to come into our hearts so it can cast our fears out. Now, what does John mean by this perfect love? And how can we attain it? Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, we must be perfect, even as our Heavenly Father is perfect. What does that mean? The answer lies in the previous statement of John. He says this, he said, God is love, we know that, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as He is, so are we in the world. So we are to love perfectly. But you say, no way, Rev. Can't love the way you're saying. I've tried to love everybody. Can't do it. And to that I say, you are absolutely right. But if it's any consolation, neither can I. I can't. You can't. But God can. John tells us God is love. God is love in all its unconditional divine perfection. And that's our answer right there. There's only one way for us to attain perfect love. And that's by inviting God into our hearts. Again, God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Want to cast out our fears? Let God's perfect love and all those things that try to scare us, well, they don't have a chance. They don't have a chance. They will be cast out of our hearts. And once that happens, we can get down to business just like the Israelites did. We can begin anew our journey to the promised land that is God's kingdom, where love reigns and where fear has no place. Saints, this is the heart of a Christian. A heart ruled not by fear, but by love. You see, a heart ruled by fear prejudges others. But a heart ruled by love accepts others. A heart ruled by fear locks out. A heart ruled by love opens doors. A heart ruled by fear builds walls. A heart ruled by love builds bridges. A heart ruled by fear is gloomy and despondent, like a typical February day. But a heart ruled by love is sunny and cheerful, like this morning. A heart ruled by fear holds up a fist. But a heart ruled by love extends a hand. Saints, ultimately, this is who God has called us to be. We are to be the world's perfect lovers. In the end, John tells us that there is really only one thing that we need fear. And it's not terrorism. It's not even great white sharks. According to John, our only concern ought to be this: not loving enough. There are plenty of churchgoers out there who profess faith in the gospel and yet will find all kinds of excuses for being afraid, for their fears, their prejudices. But John is having none of it. Listen again to his words. Those who say, I love God, but hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. So you see, it turns out that the truest test of our faith is demonstrated not in what we tell ourselves we believe or what we tell our friends we believe, but rather in how that faith is demonstrated in our genuine love for one another. This is ironic. That our fear of terrorism or anything else has tempted us into turning our backs on those in need. Whether they are stretched out homeless on city grates or struggling veterans in line at the VA or refugees seeking a place to raise their families or anyone else deserving of compassion. If we do not extend ourselves in love toward them, then we ourselves are the ones who deserve pity. Because we failed to love as God has called us to do. And just as Jesus preached in Matthew, we will be unworthy to stand before God on the day of judgment. But have heart, because it is never too late to let love in and cast our fears out. John puts it this way: love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. In other words, once we let God's perfect love abide in us, we have nothing whatever to fear from God's judgment. Because if God's love is eternal, then so too is the heart that contains it. That's our blessed assurance, gang. So saints, let's let love cast out our fears, and then let us go boldly forth, waving hope as our banner and the cross as our talisman. Let us show the peddlers of fear that they have no power over us. They can try to sell us all the fear they want. We ain't buying it. We're not buying any fear. You know why? Because it's awful hard to reach for your wallet when you're carrying a cross. Let's pray.